Hello, everybody. Cobbles and Cols podcast. Cam here. NJ, how are you, mate? How's your week been?
All good, all good. I think in the last episode I may have said that I've not been ill, but to pull the curtain back, I've had a virus for what feels like 3 weeks.
Hmm.
I've been to the doctor. The, they've told me I've basically had a virus, which is going around, the really horrible one. And then
Okay.
I'm not shifting it, so now my lungs are inflamed. So I've got
Ah,
an inhaler, and I have to take anti-inflammatory pills.
Salbutamol inhaler,
Exactly. I'm on the Chris Froome diet.
CRISPR and protocol.
It was big in 2014.
This week, Sam Jarrod Coventry from Styrkr. Thought it was a really good episode to kind of speak to SJ about how their brand seemingly came from absolutely nowhere and now they're absolutely everywhere. I thought it was
Yeah,
quite a good chat. What did you think?
yeah, it was a good chat. It sort of reminded me of, I guess, speaking to Chris Hall and Gareth as to give you some spoilers. He he, he chats. You can tell the passion. We talk about the
Mm,
passion when people ask us about shows, which ones to listen to. We tend to go with people who are very passionate. And Sam is very passionate, and you can tell by the way he talks. He knows a lot about the history of cycling. He's done it for
yeah.
racing. Now he does probably a bit more social, with it being like part of the brand. But yeah, I found that his passion came out quite a lot in it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he came across as someone that I think you would, if you were to go for a ride with him or go for a coffee stop, you'd kind of walk away and feel like someone really genuine and someone maybe you know, you could probably learn a lot from as well. I know a lot of people that listen to our podcast kind of just got into cycling or are old hands. We've got quite a good mix. So I think this is going to be one that people are going to really enjoy. The next one's going to be just the two of us, isn't it, mate? We're going to
It is.
have a
It
little
is.
have a little chat and. It's going to be when we chat next, and when that episode comes out, I think it'll be the same week that I'm heading to Belgium.
Wow.
Woefully unprepared, not very fit. So yeah, I'll give some dispatches from the pain cave, so to speak.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. And on next week, today, Big T sent us a odd request from Juicy B. He's bought an
Cool.
air road. They want it. We'll be revealing the comparisons between high engineered technology of a carbon canyon bike versus a Fairlight Strail steel free bike, which is made in Finsbury Park. What performance differences do you think there'll be? Find out next week.
Perfect. Well, let's get into the episode.
Gosh, here we
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cobbles and Cols podcast. Podcast talking to personalities, brands, and groups that make kind of cycling a incredible sport to be part of. This week we've got SJ from Styrkr, someone who NJ and I have known for a while, but kind of really solidified seeing the brand and SJ at Rouleur this year. So SJ, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you for having me. I was going to say as well, apologies. I think it's been a long time coming. I know this is meant to happen, and I feel like my fault. It's like 5 minutes before, no, sorry, in a meeting, or no, can we do this? Or no, I'm flying here. And so thank you for the patience of what's probably been almost half a year to now being on the podcast. But yeah, it's great to be on the
That's
podcast.
all right. Long-time listeners of this podcast will also know about our lack of consistency in actually getting our episodes. So maybe it also sits on my head to an extent. Long-time listeners will obviously know that we break the podcast into three kind of component parts, really. So it's who are you, how'd you get into cycling? Section 2, we'll also talk about Styrkr, the origins, where they're going, and really the great journey they've been on to really be kind of one of the de rigueur companies, brands for the people who are using in cycling, especially in London and wider Europe. And then section 3, we'll do our usual Q&A, white bib short chat, etc., etc. So maybe we'll just start with kind of section 1. SJ, maybe tell people who you are and maybe how you got into cycling to start off with.
Yeah, so SJ, I guess look after sales for Styrkr, but we're such a small team and such a dedicated team that sort of our paths overlap a lot. So yes, primary focus is putting Styrkr into new markets, working with the stores and the partners that we have, and really sort of elevating the brand from where it was to where it is now, and then to even further. But we do so much and wear so many hats and support each other as a small team that really it sort of feels like it's more than just that. And I think that's something that's really exciting about the brand, and something I really love about the role. Then I guess, I don't know, how did I get into cycling? I don't know if there's a normal route for getting into cycling. I certainly wasn't probably someone now who's hit their 30s and gone, I need to buy a bike and I need to train for a half Ironman. I had BMX bikes, I had mountain bikes as a kid, and I remember like riding around before tea and like before it got dark, and we're building jumps in the park or finding the steepest hill in the village, and it's like, how long could we ride without our hands, and just coming home with bloody elbows and everything else like that. But I guess for road cycling, I was probably a teenager, and I remember it's funny like how you get into sport and how you get like addicted to a sport as a fan or like riding. And I remember commuting and riding to like my Saturday or like my evening pub job as a teenager. I think my parents got bored of picking me up at 10:30 at night and like having to minimize their like alcohol drink, like a glass of wine before having to pick me up. And I was like, you're on your own. And I picked up a Boardman Sport 9-speed Claris, and it was in the limited edition Tour de France colorway, so it was yellow and black, and it looked like a little wasp.
I had that bike.
I had phenomenal bike, right?
Unbelievable bike. But I looked up. I saw
how much did you have to buy yours for? Do you remember?
No, so I'm. I don't. We might be the same age. I'm 32, just turned 32. And yeah, it's the TDF. No, mine wasn't a Boardman. Sorry, mine was a Carrera.
You say we're the same. No, we are. I turned 31 this year.
Yeah, mine wasn't the Boardman. Mine was the Carrera TDF, which essentially is the same bike. And I saw it on Facebook Marketplace a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, 14.5 kilo bike, and I was like, what?
A tank.
I got mine for £200. And I remember the time being like, this is a big deal, but this is how different, that was what, maybe 15 years ago. And a Cannondale CAD 12 with Ultegra on it was £1,200. And I remember that being like, how does a bike cost £1,200? So I remember getting that, and I'd be riding to work, and my God, it's probably painfully slow, but every week or every month, I just found myself getting a bit quicker. And then I'd be like, took me 19 minutes to get to work this morning. On the way back, I'm like, I'm going to see if I can beat 19 minutes. And it'd be like 18:40. I'm like, yes. Oh. And then like I'd end up just like trying to pace myself and like beat myself and get faster over like basically a 5K time trial. Like that was what I was doing. But at the same time, I remember like this was back in the glory days as well of like cycling content and how the landscape has changed. But it was like, I remember ITV4 would have all of the TV, and it was like, it must have been spring classics. So it was like, there was a race like basically every other Wednesday or every weekend. Yeah. I remember there'd be teams on there, and it'd be like, I don't know, Tinkoff Saxo, Lamprey Merida, Katusha, I Am Cycling, teams bygone years. And it's like Rafael Micah, Bursenhagen, Nibali. But I didn't realize that cycling squads were like 30 strong, and they'd only bring like 8 riders. I came from a world of like being a massive football fan, and Leeds kick off now. I know you're putting out this later, but Leeds are about to play Watford, so like that's me. I'm now like got a little score in the corner. But so I came from this period like not knowing that there was like 20 odd riders, 30 odd riders in a squad, and like you'd watch on a Wednesday, and you'd be like 1 or 2 riders, you'd learn the names, you'd be like, oh my God, this is really cool. They've attacked, or I don't know what this means. Like what's chasing, what's peloton, what's all that. And you come back to the next week and you're like, I recognize that jersey. And you look at the team list and you're like, what? Is that like a B team? Or is that like, are they playing like all the shit players are they playing all the rubbish players? Like, what's going on? And then I learned like rotation and different riders for different strengths and skill sets. And so like, then like started really getting into cycling, watching pro cycling and watching YouTube. And back then it was like Cycling Maven, Mark Ferguson.
Mark Ferguson.
But like, I loved his content, and it was used to say something like "Good morning, you legends," or like "Good morning." Like, I'm like, I don't know if it's like if you're like watching like Good Morning like Britain or something, it's like the same. Like Lorraine Kelly comes on and says, and you're like, oh, I just feel reassured. The same thing, like Francis Cade or one of my good friends now, Lawrence Carpenter, like his original videos. There's like all of this YouTube like daily vlog content, and you can just absorb so much in a week. And then from there, got into, and I was like, well, where do I go with this? Like, what do I want to do? And joined the local cycling club. And I think I'm probably one of the last eras maybe of like traditional cycling clubs compared to what you see now in London and wider of like friendship groups or like private teams or like, so they were called the Westbury Wheelers. And I don't know if any of your listeners are from Somerset, but the Westbury Wheelers is just outside of Bath. And the club kit was sky blue, gold, yellow, white, and then like the bib shorts was like the classic old days with the black on the inside of the bib shorts, like, and it had like italic writing of Westbury Wheelers across the chest. Like,
classic!
Like
yeah, classic.
the panache of wearing this kit, and like the velo toes were yellow, so they'd match in the winter. Like I'd wear like the Mavic yellow like shoes. Like you'd get into it, and like you start absorbing all of this culture and the norms of like what you had to do and what you couldn't do. But my God, I was a terrible cyclist. It came from playing decent school level and club level of various sports like cricket, hockey, rugby, Sunday foot, like love sport, always did it. And, but I remember being like, coming off my 5K time trials to the pub, being like, I'm a good cyclist. And like rocking up, and they're like, okay, so we're going to put you basically in the bottom group. And I was so offended. Offended. Like, no, I've been doing my 5K time trials. I've been watching ITV4. I should be in the top group. And so went out on this, it was like my first ride. And it was basically a 50K, 30-mile cafe ride with everyone who was basically double my age. And I was pretty much getting dropped on this rolling ride like 10 miles in. I hadn't even got to I'm like, what on earth is going on? I didn't know how to ride in the wheel. I didn't know how to ride side by side. I didn't know why they were flapping their arms around every time there's a pothole or they were turning left. But through perseverance, kept on coming back. And I loved it. And it was that community, like Sunday rides, Wednesday mornings if I had time off on the summer holidays. And like just fully got into it. And then eventually got this tap on the shoulder of like, do you want to come on a Thursday night? We do like a pace line. It's like the race training group. And I was like, yeah, okay. Again, rocked up, got dropped, but came back, did it again, and did it again. And then eventually they're like, do you want to enter a race? And I was like, here we go. Big time. I'm in. I've joined the race team.
Pack my bags, Mum. I'm going to Belgium.
Yeah, I'm off. And the options were Thruxton, Castle Combe, Odd Down, Henstridge Airfield, Maindee, and a couple of others. And like, unless you live in like sort of central southwest, like that probably means nothing to you. But like that was like
Maindee's Wales, Castle Combe, beautiful. My wife listening, we visited Castle Combe.
Stunning, right? Great golf course there as well. For any listeners who have multiple sports interests, great golf. And again, first race, second lap, dropped. But like that rush and that excitement of racing, and I was just hooked from there on in. Then did uni, went and lived in France, moved to France with my girlfriend, Juliette, and we're in Bordeaux. Joined a French cycling team called Etoile Saint-Poyen, which was the local team, and classic French club cycling had every single local shop, solicitors, pharmacists, hairdressers, supermarket, dog walker sponsoring the kit. The hairdresser's logo was like a Yu-Gi-Oh character, and it was on like the right kidney. And the kit was fluoro yellow. I wish I still had it, but I spilled, and like ripped my last set a few years ago. So then I was like, did a bit of racing in France, and like there, completely different. Like the road racing, closed roads, local towns, circuit racing, phenomenal. Came back to the UK, moved to London, and then suddenly found myself in the epicenter. I know it's not all about London, and as a brand, as a person, as everything else, I've got to remind myself. But for cycling, there's not many better places. There is a group for everyone. There is a team, a community, a shop. And was through connections in Bath, was able to get introduced to a club in London. and it was amazing. It was Regent's Park in the mornings, and that then just developed into the friendship groups. And there's rides every day, 4 or 5 different rides you can go on for different people. Some of my WhatsApp groups, there's like World Tour riders, UCI Pro riders in, and like that's if I'm only feeling really brave. But then there's like where I know that it will most definitely end with a pub, or rides in groups there who it's a 200k minimum. Like it's incredible, and sort of it just built and grew from there. And that's sort of how, for me, my cycling journey to where it is now. And I guess the racing sort of took a pause. I knew I wasn't going to get past a certain point, but out of that, the adventure, the gravel, the friendship groups, the trips to Belgium, or like backpacking weekends, it all just sort of flourished and grew.
Do you know there's a favorite? So one of the things that NJ and I love are continental teams or local teams in France, Belgium, Italy that have like are caked in sponsors. Like we love finding like the local teams, and there's a game that you can play. This is for anybody listening, but it's a game that you might appreciate playing. When you go cycling, you kind of have to think that when you go past like a little village, like the good one is Moseley. In Moseley, there's like Moseley Tires Supercuts, and it sounds like a very niche Belgian cycling team. It's obviously it's on Moseley High Street when you go into Surrey. Yeah, and it's a game that my friends and I, that Patrick, who listens to this podcast, we play the local cycling team or UK High Street. And 9 times out of 10, it's just the same thing. Moseley Tires Supercuts. Yeah. Upcoming continental team out of Richmond Park.
Nice. No, I think I'll come back with some suggestions. I think of it off the top of my head, but I do rate a good continental or like amateur, like on the continent European team. Like they do it like no one else.
Yeah, you need the big sponsors. I think Cam, aren't you liking the JCL team Ukyo from Japan at the moment?
Right. Okay. So I can't believe you brought this up. Right. So there's a Japanese. Okay. So I talk to NJ every single day, obviously, but I also talk to NJ 3 times a week about my quest to find. There's a team called UCL Yuko team. They're a Japanese continental team currently in the Alula Tour and doing all the kind of Chat GPT greenwashing races.
Oman Tour.
Yeah, and they have so many Japanese sponsors, and they're a continental team. They've got like Yokohama Tires, Mitsubishi, and they've got some like really niche stuff. And I've been trying to get their kit for about a year, even so much as DMing them on Instagram in English and in Japanese, hoping they'll reply to me. Nothing. Silence.
Is it a good kit?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really good. We'll put it on the show notes. Well, I'll send it to you after. Yeah, I think it's quite a cool kit.
Talking of getting hands-on kit, like I cannot begin to tell you the side quests and how much time I spent for about a month trying to get my hands on an Azure Desire kit before they went out of the brown bib short livery into what they were. Don't get me wrong, branding is great, but like for me, it's cult status. And so I am pals that I know that live in Girona, pals that I know that work as like Swannies in the World Tour Series or used to be on a similar team. I like sent so many DMs, like on a drunken night out when you get home and you start texting all of your exes when you're single. Like I was trying to get this kit of like where I could get my hands on it. I was desperate to get my hands on that kit.
You need to DM Pro Cycle Kits in Australia. Because that guy,
I just didn't want to give up and do it. Like I'm going to buy it. Like I wanted to get my hands like on that Rider issue, kind of like in the background channel. But yeah, that was the easiest way. I could have just Googled it and paid, but I was only here for the paying for postage.
Have you found anywhere?
I got some, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Because I was going to say you need to just randomly go to like some vintage shop in France, and it would just be like there, pristine, and some place in Bordeaux.
I was trying to find it for you. I'll send it to you after. This team kit is exceptional. But I mean, like, so I'm, I suppose I said on the podcast, I'm going to Belgium next month. It will be 2 weeks after this gets released. And I found the team that I've decided to go pro for. And they're like as Belgian as you come. They don't know it yet. No, I'm going to probably turn up and do a quick 5 minute, or maybe a quick ramp test.
You're impressive on the eau de quamont.
Yeah. I do like that guy who got a pro contract recently who's just like nabbing KOMs and was like, everybody started paying attention and he's signed to a continental team. But this kit's really loud. I think it's like yellow, purple, and a bit brown. And they're sponsored by like the local manure manufacturer and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll expect to see that. Expect to see that being deployed.
Do you know what they're called?
We'll put it in the chat. Let me figure it out. I've got something. I should have done some more research.
Is it the local high street?
Yeah, it's proper local high street.
You could have just put like lots of Belgian brands together then, and we wouldn't have been any the wiser. Start with 1T.
Always start with 1T. Right. Should we head to section 2 and we can hear all about Styrkr?
Welcome back, everyone. Now we're going to find about the history of Styrkr. So how was Styrkr founded, SJ?
I think you say history of Styrkr, but we only started 3 years ago, really officially. Celebrated our third birthday in Jan, so don't really have a history in the same way, or like I guess a pedigree or a legacy. But Styrkr, I guess, it's thanks to Christian, who's our founder. You guys met Christian at Rouleur, but it was probably about four or 5 years ago that sort of like the idea of Styrkr sort of blossomed or came to a part. And Christian was training at the time for Badlands, which is probably one of the most grueling and hardest self-supported bikepacking or bike races there is, especially in Europe, or at least Southern Europe. And it's in Spain, and boiling hot summer days, freezing cold winters, gradients, mixed terrain. Like, it's ruthless, absolutely ruthless. One of my favorite things at the moment is when I've got friends on big ultra races, is to like ring them on like day 3 when they're at their lowest and just be like, hey, how's it going? You look like you're having fun. And I'll make sure that I'm on holiday, or I'm in bed, or I'm having a bath, where I'm just super relaxed in a really luxurious, comfortable place, and they're almost throwing up on the side of the road, or like in a crippled position outside of a petrol station, or like carrying their bike up a rocky face. And Badlands is one of those races where it's just brutal, absolutely brutal. But for Christian, he's someone who I think will probably retire and have a house in the Shetlands in the middle of nowhere with his dog, his Land Rover, his family, and it's hiking, long walks. Like, he's just outdoors and endurance enthusiast, and he's a pretty inspiring character, and he's someone who I love working for and learning from and being around. I think that's something that's really important in terms of a boss and a company, sort of like how it's led. But he's training for Badlands, and his training sessions sort of evolved into regimes. His weekends turned into mini training camps. And I think for then, it was that moment of sort of questioning the science behind the sacrifice. And what really hit home during that period was like the importance of fueling and nutrition and what it meant, especially when you go beyond a couple of hours. When you're doing 7 hours, 12 hours, and you're doing back-to-back days, and suddenly your volume's getting closer to like 500 plus K weeks into training. And at the time, he sort of felt that there was no real nutrition brand that spoke for him in that endurance category. And I think, there are gels that have that same artificial sweetness, or bars that have a clagginess to them, or like really dry, like hard to take on board, or it's that taste fatigue, it's the flavor fatigue, or it's just because of the ingredients and how they're made and what they're designed for, like they just leave you with terrible gut issues or irritation, or just fall straight through you, or there's not enough actual fuel in it. And I think that is something that really hit home and he really struggled with. And there's a few moments where, he's telling stories about training, and he's also done some wild things where I'm pretty sure he's done King Alfred's Way just fueled on Snickers bars, purely just to see like what fueling was like and like how he could test his body to worst case scenario. So he's training, and one of the beauties is that, Styrkr and his background and Christian's background is in health and wellness and supplements. So Christian for a long time has had like a finger on the pulse and understanding of health and wellness and supplements and how they're made, the manufacturing, what the trends are, where it goes, and from inception to finished product. So it meant that he had R&D, he had production, he had that knowledge at his disposal effectively. And from that, he started to create his own. And with that, I think the first samples that he went to Badlands with were some of the gel 30s, a first iteration of the Mix 90, and then the Date and Almond and Sea Salt Bar 50, which is actually like, they taste phenomenal. And people say like, oh, it tastes like something I'd make at home with like my gran on a Sunday. So, he set off at Badlands, and the first sort of iterations were some of the gel 30s. It was the CAF, the Nitro, and the L-Sit. Some of the Mix 90, and then the Date and Almonds and Sea Salt Bar 50. But that Date and Almond Bar 50 is the OG. It was the first flavor. And it came from a tray bake that he would make with his daughter as like a healthy snack. So the dates, the sea salt, the golden syrup, the Rice Krispies, puff rice, all melted and mixed together, a little sprinkling of chocolate in there as well, which was probably when Christian wasn't looking and his daughter's gone like, chocolate. And then like it's all being mixed together out on the baking tray, set, and then chopped up into like that is the original Bar 50 recipe. So that was the sort of the core of it. And then electrolytes are in there as well, and we played around with that. And Christian went to Badlands, and he showed me some of the meticulous planning in terms of like what every day looked like, every half an hour, every hour for the race, where there was water, where there was fuel stops, where there was petrol stations, where there were towns, when they would be doing X amount because it was heavy and intense, when they would sort of try and ease back in and soak up the miles. And everything was meticulously planned in terms of fueling as well. And it was the basis of the fuel tool that we now have as part of Styrkr, which you can log on and, help with your own training and help with your own nutrition plan. And we also shared it with some of the competitors. And where some competitors were sort of dropping like flies or not quite got their fueling right, or, had an absolute nightmare with punctures or split rims or whatever, like everyone who used Styrkr and had touch words, good faith when it came to punctures and mechanicals, had a really good race and had phenomenal feedback around our initial products. And get me wrong, like the branding now is stellar, and it's something we're super proud of, and I'll go into more about that. But we literally had like silver foil packets that's going to look like the yogurt packets with no branding on, just Sharpie written on saying gel 30. Or like the mix was in basically like plastic bags, like Ziploc bags. And the gels again, like similar thing, like Bar 50 is just wrapped in tinfoil and like written on. Like that's what the first iterations of Styrkr look like. And if you ever make it to the office, and I think one day maybe there's going to be a Styrkr museum, but on the wall for Christian's birthday last year, he has got a framed photo of a frame that has all 4 or 5 iterations of the Gel 30 Nitro Plus. From the packaging it looks like now to the first packaging to then the samples all the way back.
Oh, nice.
And it's really cool to sit there and look at and go, in the short space of 4 years, 3 years, that's what we've accomplished. So that's sort of like inception and this like harebrained idea of like, I'm going to make my own nutrition. I mean, like, I don't think like that in terms of I've got this big endurance race, or I've got a marathon I'm training for, I've downloaded my app, I've joined a run club, or I've joined a club, I've signed up to a TAP, or, London Brighton. Nutrition, it's normally blogs, YouTube, ask your mates, see what's out there, or, what's online, what does your local bike shop recommend? That's in the normal route. But for Christian, it was, no, I'm going to make it myself, which like blows my mind still. But that's, the mentality that came in with. And fast forward to finishing the race, and he's absolutely buckled and broken, and had a fantastic performance. But it was like, well, maybe there's legs here. There's something in it. Like, I think the endurance community deserves more, and I think we can do it. I think we can provide it. So the next year before official launch was the months and months of R&D and the refinement and going over the recipes. It was working with certain universities. It was working with other elite athletes, and it became this sort of labor of love and this sort of meticulous approach to then deciding and really refining what our core product offering, our initial product offering was, and the science that went into it. And then around that, it was this question, this idea of like, well, what is the brand? What do we call it? And what sets us apart? What is our core statement, or what's our mission or our ethos that people are really going to trust and believe in? Or even actually, what is it that we believe in and that will carry through everything that we do? And I think, Styrkr's purpose now really is, it's a long-term ambition to disrupt and drive that long-term transformation of endurance nutrition. That's sort of at the heart of everything we want to do. We want to fuel your ambition, and we want to give you the strength to go further. And that's the innovation and science in our products. It's how we educate our community and wider about fueling. And it's as a brand, how we approach, interact, and sort of connect with that community and our community, whether it's through races, events, shows, the language that we use. And that was sort of always there in the background and always part of what it was that drove us forwards. So I think sort of talking about the ethos and the messaging, you'll notice like bar 50, gel 30, mix 90, that number is the amount of carbs that's in each product.
Yeah.
I think you've seen articles that have come out recently. I think there's one on, I can't remember where it's from, but it's talking about how actually science now believes that there's a glass ceiling in carbs. And where we talked a long time before about aiming for 60 to 90 grams per hour is sort of what you might look like for a cyclist like me and you. Now we're looking at, elite endurance athletes, like whether it's world tour cycling or whether it's people who are racing ultra trails in Western States 100 in USA, or the big ultra rides like Atlas is going on at the moment. Like Cormac is absolutely smashing it. It's insane the distances that they will cover. All of that is now being like, actually 90 grams, 100 grams, there are elite riders and runners who are getting to 140 grams plus an hour. So coming into a sport, and you pick your bike and your kit and you get better and you train. And when I first started riding, it was sort of fasted training rides, and it was about how aero the kit was. Magazines were all about the latest Castelli speed suit. And don't get me wrong, like Castelli does fantastic kit, and like they have that pedigree, and other brands are accessible and available to buy. But like it was about the rims and the bike and the weight, and that was what the focus was, and the training.
Nothing about what you ate.
Nothing about what you ate. Nothing about that training.
It's just like eat a jam sandwich.
Yeah, and so that was sort of, now like training and everything is a lot more of a holistic view, and people have become a lot more health literate and are a lot more in tune with how they benefit their training in a more well-rounded periods, like through sleep, through supplementation, through strength and conditioning, through your recovery process, and of course through nutrition. But I don't know about you and me, but if you go into some stores or like big chain supermarkets or something else, like, or big cycling stores, or go online, and it can just be a flood of colors, of flavors, of different brands and different types of sugars and different claims, and you don't really know where to start. And some brands, it can have the same type of gel for that brand, and depending on the flavor, the amount of carbs in that product will change by 1 gram, by 2 grams, by 1.4.
And it's not consistent.
It's really hard to get your head round, or really like start to plan and understand how to fuel. And being an endurance brand for us, and I think this is one like something that I hold really important, and I think is really important in sport, is that endurance doesn't have a distance and it doesn't have a time. You know, at the moment, for me, I'm training for Tracker 360K. That for me is endurance. That is anywhere from,
It's a long day.
yeah, if you're winning it, it's 12 hours. If you're anywhere in between that and people who are rolling in 24 hours later, it's a big old day on the
Have you
tools.
done Tracker before?
Yeah, quite a few times. It's like a penance, I guess, almost like that.
Is this
But
the first 360 or is
no,
have
no.
you returned? So you sort of
Yeah,
know what you're in for.
yeah, I know what I'm in for. Like, is that sadism or masso? Say, I don't know, but like, so endurance, it doesn't have a time or a distance. For me, it's training now for Tracker 360. For one of our athletes, Will Robinson, who is an unbelievable athlete and one of the nicest human beings in the world, but he's just run across India.
Oh,
And then a month later, he's just done the Spine Race, which is basically the Pennine Rally, like 200 kilometers plus 200 miles. I think like he'll like, and you're running across the mountains through the night, through the snow, and then across India was, hundreds of Ks every day for 7 days, 10 days, all that. Like, but likewise for Juliet, my girlfriend, for her parents who are doing bikepacking trips, it's maybe 30K a day for 5 days in southern Italy. Life's hard.
different
But
vibe.
for all three of us, we deserve to understand how to hydrate properly and how to fuel properly. And it's either for the pointy end and that peak performance because you're there, to win a race. It could be more because of your personal training. You want to be able to beat and set like your own personal goals and your own PBs and something that you want to attain. Or it could just be a way to, manage and sustain a certain level of energy so you can have those repeated days and really enjoy that journey or what that trip is. So by taking that and then looking at Styrkr, by able to then understand how many grams of carbs are in each product, you then start to have this way of creating building blocks of knowing that, okay, I've had my breakfast, I've got a 3-hour ride, it's this sort of intensity, it's this sort of group, or it's hilly, it's flat. I'm probably going to need X amount of carbs, or I use the fuel tool and I sort of get some helpful guidance there. And then you can go, great. You open up your cupboard and your snack drawer and you're like, cool, I'm going to take one bar 50. I'll put a mix 60 in my bottle. And then I'm going to have a gel 50 and it's berry because it's my favorite flavor. And you know what? We're probably going to sprint to some town signs because it's that sort of group. I'm going to take an extra caffeine gel just in case. And then you sort of know and you can plan and build accordingly and you can feed that in. So that was a huge, huge important part for Styrkr, was sort of being able to build that trust and have those educational tools for our community where they can feel that they are growing and building their understanding of nutrition and have that trust in a product.
Sort of going back, when you're talking about, I guess, Styrkr founding, and it's only been 3 years, did you know Christian beforehand, or was that something like, how did you join the Styrkr team? I guess because it's so new, I guess when someone's starting up like a startup like this, how did you get involved with it?
This is first time working in sport, first time working in, I guess, nutrition really, and also first time effectively, I think, working in also sort of sales, I guess. Like working in this whole industry, in this whole sphere is, as a paid job, is completely new. But
What were you doing beforehand?
So I was working in PR and comms, and specifically within healthcare. So I was working for a big global agency, and I loved it. It was fascinating. I got to work in the most incredible team, and it was a fantastic job, a fantastic role. Great offices, great lifestyle. Learned so much. It was one of those teams where everyone around you was so smart, so intelligent, so charismatic, and so driven. And then your clients were also so smart, so passionate, so dedicated. And I loved it. But my social life and all of my friends were YouTubers or professional athletes or were just traveling the world, or somehow seemed to have much more time for cycling or running or climbing or mountaineering than I did.
Yeah.
And I it was also sort of starting to pick up, like enjoying some photography and some other bits of my racing. And I was like, I just wish I had more time for this. And I don't know how. And I love the role that I had, but I also sort of knew that I didn't want to retire doing it. I sort of very much felt like I was just going through the motions. And I was like, you do this, and then, you then go into the promotion round. And then the next year you do that. And then,
Yeah.
you sort of just go through the levels. And I sort of realized it wasn't for me. I was good at it. I enjoyed it. I was okay, but I wanted more. It wasn't really sating that thirst. And I sort of set myself the challenge or the gambit that I would spend a year trying to see if I could get another job or do something within the world of sport. And I didn't know, obviously, I knew that wasn't going to be a professional athlete. I know we joked
Yeah.
about joining this Belgian team or it wasn't to be a professional athlete. It was either to work for a professional team. It
Yeah.
was to work in another PR agency more around sport and outdoor lifestyle, or it was to work for a brand within sport. I didn't really know what it was, but I kind of thought maybe I can find a career in that. And I think there was lots of transferable skills, but on paper there was nothing there that goes like, oh yeah, you've worked your way through. That makes sense. So I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to take a year and throw myself into the deep end, and
Yeah.
I'm going to work for free. I'm going to take photos for free. I'm going to Swanee for professional teams. I'm going to go on shoots. I'm going to sell myself to brands. You name it, I'm going to do it. And I was like,
Yeah.
best case scenario, at the end of the year, I've got a job out of it. Somewhere in the middle, maybe some freelance work, maybe, a few discounts, a few freebies here and there that, it's not a cheap sport, running or cycling or anything. I
Yeah.
was like, well, worst case scenario, I will have had an incredible year where every weekend or every holiday, I'll have gone and done something amazing or been surrounded some really cool people who had some incredible experiences. And I was like, that's how I leveled it with myself, and did get to do some really cool stuff. And it was about halfway through, about 6 months in, that I met Sam Andrews, who's a really close friend of mine, who has worked with Styrkr in the past, who we now still work with on like photography and content.
Yeah.
And I was sort of, there, and I was like, hey, copywriting, I could do some of that maybe, or some photography, I could do some of that, or, if there's something there, just let me know. Just sort of like every budding freelancer trying to annoy a brand and get a foot in the door. And the team I was riding with at the time was sponsored by Styrkr. So I knew of the brand and I was using the products and I really liked the products, but that was the only connection that I had. Anyway, it was one event and Sam was like, actually, we're kind of looking for someone,
Yeah.
basically it's just to do anything. I was like, what? And he's like, well, the team's like this big. We want to be this big, but the team can only still be this big to do all of this. So
Yeah.
I then chatted with Sam, came to the office, met Christian, and again, like, just got completely absorbed into what the vision was and what the brand
Yeah.
was. And I think my first technical title was like sales and customer service assistant or something like that. And I was doing customer service in the morning. Then I was trying to win new accounts in the mid-afternoon. Then in the late afternoon, I was back on customer service. Then I was trying to win more accounts. Then I was helping plan and prep for events on the weekend. Then I was doing something else. Then I'd go back to the next day. And then on the weekends, I think when I first started, my first summer was about 12 weekends on the trot of going up and down the country, of doing different events, different races, run clubs, stuff with other brands, and absolutely loved it. And it sort of just progressed from there. So
Yeah.
yeah, completely different lifestyle to what I do now, but I wouldn't swap it for the world.
Yeah, that sounds like super fun, super engaging. And I guess once you, not to sound all cliche, but I guess when you love your job, it doesn't feel as much as a job as I guess you working in the corporate world, working that ladder.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. We've had those growing pains or those
Yeah,
strains. It's only a good thing. You're going in the right direction. You sort of feel like you're holding everything by your fingertips, putting it together. Like as we've grown so quickly over the last 3 years, and you know, we I think as a whole team sacrifice a lot because we're so dedicated and so passionate about the brand. I think when I saw you at Rula, I just spent a week in Australia, flew
yeah,
out on Sunday, had 6 days in 3 different cities, and then flew back. Then I had 3 days in the office, and I pretty much came straight from the airport into the office, went straight into Rula,
yeah.
finished Rula on Saturday night, and then at 6 a.m. I was at Heathrow Airport flying to Texas for
Yeah,
Styrkr in the USA. And I think it was pretty much a stretch of sort of September through to November where I pretty much did 46 days on the trot almost. So there are times where
yeah,
it does take its hit or it does take a knock, and you
yeah,
sort of do look after yourself and remember sort of what it's all for. But it's an incredible brand. It sounds quite maybe cliche, sycophantic, but I think
yeah,
it's incredible to see how much we've grown or how far we're progressing and what the potential is, or not quite knowing what the potential is, but knowing that this we can keep on going, and there's something really exciting that we're fostering in the community, the products that we're creating and
yeah.
making, and then sort of beyond that as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the whole going up and down the country for 12 weeks, going to Australia, again to Texas. Is that, to me, that kind of shows that you're showing like quite big community vibe at the weekend, going to places with Styrkr and putting on events. Can you tell us about, I guess, how important is, I guess, community outreach to you?
I think community is probably one of the most important aspects of Styrkr for multiple reasons. I think one, when we first started, you launched a nutrition brand. The most important thing is putting product in people's hands. It doesn't matter how many blogs, how many podcasts, unless it's this podcast, how many YouTube videos, how many teams or athletes you sponsor. The most important part is putting product into people's hands. Like once someone's tried it and they've got their hands on it, like that
Yeah,
is the biggest hook and the biggest gateway for them becoming a lifelong or a long-term customer or being part of our community. So, and the only way you can do that is going to where the community is and then growing your
yeah,
own community around that. So that is a big part of it. And the first 2 years for Styrkr was very much getting the brand out there and putting into as many hands as possible. So it was all of the events, all of the races, as many community rides and run clubs as we could do. Then on the back of it, on a more sort of commercial and strategic level, it was the expos and the trade shows. Um, and then now it's still a super important part. I think I like the idea that when someone thinks of Styrkr or talks about Styrkr, they'll be able to say, I went to this event and I got to try it there. Or I did this race and did this run and I got to meet them. Or I was
yeah,
first introduced to it by so and so who did X, Y, and Z. And there's like those sort of like degrees of separation where it wasn't just I saw it on discount or it was a sample. Like there's some form of connection. And it's like, and I went to these events afterwards and I really enjoyed them, or I learned this, or it was really cool because of X, Y, and Z. And we want the brand to have a personality, to have a character. And I think there's a lot of brands out there, not just in nutrition, that don't have that, and it's just a logo or a name, and then there's
yeah,
not much to it. There's some brands which I love and really admire who do incredible work within community building. And I think there's an adage that I read the other day. It was something about like how you know community, like strategy can be copied but like community can't be beaten or something like that. Like I've absolutely mashed it up completely, but isn't like you can like, yeah, I've ham-fisted that one, but it's like that idea of like you can copy playbooks and you can copy imagery, and but actually it's the community and everything around it, and it's the storytelling and everything there that really makes what a brand is. And also the benefit is the community plays a massive point and a massive part in building Styrkr. I think you can talk about it in terms of as an asset and the strength of a brand, of having a community. And I think a lot of people will chase that clout of being like, I have X amount of people that turn up to my run club or my ride club, or, they all share X, Y, and Z, and it's another marketing tool. But for us, we also get so much from our community on the reverse, where, for example, some of the products we've launched, either the flavor or the composition or the timing of the launch has been down to our community and other partners. So, for example, like the Gel 50, we weren't probably going to release till about this time this year, but we knew where high carb fueling was about to have its moment through the research and the market and our partners. But we had so many emails or from events being like, I love the Gel 30, but are you going to do anything that's bigger? Or I've got this sort of race, and actually having 50 grams would be incredible, or 40 grams would be incredible, or etc. And that all came through our community, and it was either through email, social media, or being there in person, or feedback that our ambassadors and athletes had from their community and their people. And then, it led us to be like, okay, we've been sort of sitting on this within R&D and experimenting and playing around with formulations and what it could be. But I think now's the time to launch it. And we accelerated that process of launching Gel 50 because of a big part of the community that we have playing into that. Likewise as well, some of the samples and other bits at the moment, the new bottles we've just released, the pearl one that we've got, and then the plum one, we're sat in the office with 60 different colored Tax water bottles and going like, I like this color. No, I like that color. No, that color's better. And we're going around in circles here. So Christian just shared onto his stories, okay, narrow it down. Out of these 10, which are your favorite? And we went down to 5 or 6. Then 2 days later, okay, cool. Out of those 6, which one's your favorite? And that went down to 4. And then it went down to basically, it was our community that then chose the colors of those water bottles. It's so minute, but that's something that we then also hold really dear to us, is that they're almost part of the decision making as well, and they're part of what drives or changes the direction of where Styrkr is heading.
Yeah, strong products that tend to have, I guess, great user feedback, and I think you're, leveraging that in quite a very beneficial way, which I think is like really engaging the community as well, because they feel heard as well. Because there's lots of companies out there that will like just do stuff and people don't like it.
Yeah, and we've tweaked formulations as well of some of our products where it's because of that community feedback, and it's positive or a little bit. It's been like, oh, didn't think of that as a user case. Where as a small sample size, we can do so much research, but we're such a small group. So then having that wider community is like, that makes complete sense, and then you can make those tweaks and you can improve, and it's for the audience, it's what they want rather than us deciding what we think our community wants.
Kind of getting into the maybe nitty-gritty bit of it. So I think we spoke about it in the break just now. You were saying kind of how the process goes through. I don't think you used the word accreditation, but kind of how you verify and how you do the whole kind of product development. Would you mind talking us through maybe how you go from inception to delivery, so to speak? Sorry to use my really wanky finance chat, but yeah, how do you go from having an idea to getting it in people's hands? Phrase it that way. Let's do that. Don't cut that out, NJ. I'm an idiot.
How do we go from nothing to a new product on the shelf? There's no one straightforward, clear, organized process in terms of these are the steps in the checklist and this is the Gantt chart of what has to happen to get there. Some new products are, I guess there's sort of multiple ways that we have the idea of like what it could be. And it could be from someone in the team being like, have we thought of this? And it could be from something they've read or watched. It could be from what we've seen wide and far in different markets and different industries. I think the beauty of my role is the amount of travel I do. So the new markets and different areas and there with different culture and different riding habits or different sports, etc., that I get to go on. So, last year when I went out to Taiwan, I came back with a hand luggage bag full of nutrition and supplements and drinks and fuel from all sorts of different sports, from 7-Elevens, from dedicated sports stores, from pharmacies, from the supermarket, of just being like, I have never seen anything like this before. Almost like gels that were really thick but had like matcha flavors, to like tart cherry concentrates that was like a natural supplement around oxidization and refueling that and recovery, to supplement powders that were in like little sugar sachets that you could pour in your tongue and would dissolve and were like orange Sunny D flavor, and it was like vitamin C. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the method of how it's administered, the purpose of it, the packaging, like it's such a wide world out there. So that'll be a big part in terms of what we see and where we can draw inspiration from. We'll have athletes that will come to us and say, hey, I really would like to train with X type of product, or this isn't something that's currently in your lineup, but it would really help me, and there's a user case for it. And we can go, that's really interesting. We can explore it, we can play around, and it might be that we then create something that's unlabeled for them to use, and we can get feedback, test loop, improve it, and then it's a product that we then launch in a future date. Or it can be as simple as then, I guess, then as athletes, and then you also have professional teams and other sports that we work with that will then have their feedback and say, we need a product like X because of what we do. Or it can be sitting in the office and we're having lunch or having a coffee and being like, has anyone ever made this before?
Yeah.
And we're like, what? And then so that's sort of where the ideas come from. The beauty of Styrkr is that we, unlike many brands, manufacture our own products. We have R&D in-house, we have brand in-house, we have our compliance in-house, which means that we can turn around ideas very quickly. And it means that we can play around and we can create samples very quickly. And that sort of really helps because we then have that sandpit at our hands. Yeah. So then it's sort of like, why don't we try and make this? Can you try and make this? Or we sort of leave R&D to be as wild thinking and as creative, as innovative as they want to be. And then they sort of just come back, not sort of like electrocuted and like stuff smoking and, like some like crazy scientists, but they'll come back and be like, we've thought about this. What does this look like? What do you think about this? And we'll sit down as a team and we'll sample and we'll try and we'll consider and we'll put points and we'll all go around the office and ask for feedback, and basically the entire office and the whole team. It doesn't matter if you're semi-professional, whether your sport is completely outside of the world of what Styrkr currently looks at. We ask for everyone's feedback and their thoughts, and then that'll go into the next sampling process. Then sort of once we've got an idea, we sort of know what we want the product to be or what it looks like. Then that sort of gets into the more granular of then going into refining, into formulation, into branding, into costing. And that process can be something really simple that is sort of turned around in a couple of months, to something where we've actually got to create brand new machinery, or the ingredients that we want, we sort of have to work with specialist suppliers to sort of understand how we can create them. Or it could be that the tub and the size of product that we want, then the lid doesn't fit, and you then have to go back to the drawing board. It can be really small things that can create hiccups along the way. So the ideas come from a multitude of places, and we rely on all sorts there, and we welcome sort of all ideas. Having everything in-house means that we can really play and really have some excitement and really have some real cool innovation in there. And then there's sort of like the long corporate bit in the middle of doing all of those steps.
Yeah.
And then it sort of gets into those latter stages where we sort of have 3D mock-ups. We had the samples, we know sort of what the finished product's going to be. And then it's going to key retail partners, brands, the stores, the distributors, the countries that we work with, and being like, this is something that we're about to launch or we want to launch. And we'll ask for their feedback in the process. So some of them will already know what's coming down the pipeline. But then it's like, building that anticipation and building excitement and understanding how do we tell the story or how do we educate around this product, if it's something that's completely new to our portfolio or if it's something that's an addition and we think complements the range that we already have.
Yeah, I think I guess because you're a small team, you kind of cut out all the bureaucracy of like, I guess, maybe the bigger companies, and it means that you can, I guess, accelerate all of these products quite well in like a really nice collaborative way.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, I guess before we go to the break, what does the future hold for Styrkr?
What's next for Styrkr? It's a good question. I think there's a few parts. I guess for us as a brand, a big part is perhaps the storytelling and allowing more people to understand what makes us tick and what really drives us, or what our products are and why we think they're so important. So we've got the Founder Story YouTube series where sort of Christian every other week is talking about updates in the brand, what's been going on behind the scenes, what some of our athletes have been doing. I think that's really cool to see, sort of being able to have a tangible link and sort of being able to sort of go behind the scenes or peek behind the curtain for the brands. Also doing our athlete series, so sort of introducing more in depth around our athletes and ambassadors. And I think it'd be remiss not to talk about them. Generally speaking, our athletes are incredibly inspiring, or they're fantastic storytellers, or have done incredible feats. But they're also, I think we try and choose people who are super approachable as well and have that ability to be, we work with Olympians, with World Tour cyclists in the background. Styrkr is currently being used in F1, in Premier League football. There's a whole range of areas where Styrkr is used, and we do it for a multitude of reasons. One, to be able to do product testing. One, to be able to support, because there's a need for that endurance fueling and that hydration, that nutrition. But that's a big part now, is sort of really growing and working with our ambassadors, and it's that sort of the storytelling. In terms of sort of where I see the brand going as we are, in terms of countries and markets, US is going phenomenally well, and we're seeing huge growth and seeing a real community grow there, and it's predominantly around gravel cycling and endurance cycling and also sort of trail running. So really starting to explore those routes and growing the store network and the retail partners that we have out there, and working with the Feed, who is our main partner in the US. We have some really exciting partnerships and ambassadors and teams that we're going to start announcing and sort of trickling in over the next month or so. Outside of that, USA, Europe are really starting to, I guess, boom, really starting to take hold. We've just, for Tour Down Under in Australia, we were the nutrition at the Rafa feed stations for all of the community rides that they did over Tour Down Under. Incredible experience, incredible opportunity to be able to put product in people's hands. We've got a really strong partner with Bike Bug in Australia, who have got a wealth of knowledge and understanding. Last year we onboarded 9 new countries and started selling Styrkr into 9 new countries. I think when I first started at Styrkr, we had a handful of UK stores and 1 distributor. We've now got 13 distributors and probably close to 1,000 stores globally, if you add them all up.
Yeah.
And we've done that in a year and a half. So it's then looking at like the 101 incredible opportunities we've got ahead of us, and making sure that we pick the best 5 almost at a time, and have that growth, and making sure that we're consistent with the brand and the story that we want to tell, and the values that we want to put across, and the messaging, having the right team in place and growing that team. And we have an incredible team there. And then I guess maybe the interesting part, or the groovy part, is new products as well. We have our core range of what we're most known for, and the best sellers, the Bar 50s, which I don't know about you, but like, I can't keep them at home. Like, it is dangerous.
That date one you've got, it's like danger, mate. It's absolute
too
danger.
nice.
Endurance fueling with a cup of tea mid-afternoon is a dangerous path to get down. So
these spreadsheets don't build themselves, mate. I've got to be fueled,
Yeah, we do have new products coming this year. Some of them are already in the hands of athletes and key partners, and that is part of that feedback loop. That is part of the whole bigger picture of bringing them to launch. They will come in spring, early spring, and then sort of late spring, early summer. They're all pretty much new products to our core range. It's not just a new flavor or a new size. They are all completely new products to our range. One of which I think will probably go straight to being a bestseller within the first year, and it's something completely new. And it's taken us 2 years, 2 painstaking years to develop and get to where it is now. And then the others are purely based on what we think is a gap or what's missing in our portfolio, or what we think is missing in terms of the wider community. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how those take hold. But behind that, sort of, we spoke about MPD earlier. We probably have about, at any one time, 12 ideas in the MPD pipeline. And that can be from just literally scribble on the back of a cigarette packet to fast samples to with athletes and testing. And some of them will go, that was an absolutely terrible idea. Who thought of that? To, okay, we'll test it a bit further, to, yeah, this is what's going to be next. And let's look at a gap in our calendar. We'll look at what markets it aligns with and when we want to release it. So there's always this sort of churn in the background of new ideas constantly evolving and growing. But it's really exciting. The first 2 years of Styrkr is products in people's hands, that extraordinary growth, and just being out there and being as many places as possible. The last year sort of felt a little bit more almost like the I don't know, for us it was like, okay, is the brand got legs? Is it going to stick? I guess almost like cooking pasta thrown against the wall. Is it cooked? Is it going to stick, or is it going to fall down? Are we gaining accounts? Are we growing as a business? Are we going into new countries? Are we having new customers? And if you go down if you'd ask someone who works in the team that works in performance marketing and D2C and e-com, what is the ROAS? Is the, average spend, the new accounts, all of that metrics, are they going in the right direction? There's the cold hard bottom line and the revenue and the growth. There's last year was very much okay, is this brand still going to be here at the end of the year, in 5 years, in 10 years? And what we projected, or what we thought we were going to do last year, sort of was maybe about here. We finished the year up here. We absolutely smashed what we thought we were going to do. And there's moments of a moment of oh my, it's like someone else, celebrities, when do they know they're famous, or when do they know they made it, or that kind of thing. And I think for the brand, there's little moments where you realize oh my gosh, we're going somewhere, or we're doing something that actually people want and people believe in. And it can be little things. I think one of the first ones for me was, we had a world tour cyclist reach out and ask to use our product. And that was, it was like being asked on a date by your crush at school, and you're like, oh my God, that was one moment for me. I think another one was just being around and being in the park and just seeing Styrkr bottles on bikes. That was another one that was really, really at first it was kind of cute. You're like, it's a Styrkr bottle. After the 100th one, you're like, okay, I get it. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, it's a Styrkr bottle. Okay. Sam, you can stop pointing them out now like yellow cars. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then, so you have those moments where you're where it grows and it builds. So look, I think we're going to continue to push and grow and drive. And, we want to be the best sports nutrition endurance fuel brand there is. We want to be synonymous with endurance sports. That's through the products that we bring to market, the community that we hold, the messaging and the education. And it's sort of, how we get there and how we do it. We're still a young brand and we're still figuring it out. But so far, we make mistakes, but we learn from them and we adapt, and then we just go on and grow from there. Like, that's
amazing. Well, maybe that in mind, we head to section 3 for the Q&A. Cheers. Welcome back, everybody. Section 3 Q&A. So, SJ, when you're out and about where you're living now, what's your kind of classic route? Where's your kind of local loop, would you say?
do you know, so I live in Putney, southwest London, which means I am so spoiled for choice. You know, I grew up in the Regent's Park lap. It's cold. It's very easy for me on a lunch to go out and do a lap and a half or some ballet lap loops of Richmond. I think there's probably some that, I guess, favourite route is Denby's Hill. Going up the back of the vineyards, Ranmore Common, Effingham Junction, nice rolling roads out, beautiful views, quieter than Box, on the other side of the valley. That for me is one of my favorite loops. If someone's like, you've got 3 hours where you're riding, it's a Denby's and back. But, other things as well, like big long ones, out to Margate, maybe get the train back, some fish and chips, a little dip in the sea. Love that. Absolutely love that in the summer, or even like Friday night, finish work early, ride down to Brighton Beach. Growing up, I've lived in a few places, but family lives in Bath now. Like Salisbury Plains, Somerset, Coltswolds, Cheddar Gorge, Wells, like some stunning riding and lanes around there. And I think that's probably what I hold closest to me, in terms of like more local. But I also used to live in France, and there was like a little 30-40k loop, and we lived basically slap in the middle between oh my god, I forgot where I lived. So we lived slap bang in the middle between Bordeaux and do you know what? I'll start again. So outside of that, I think something else I then hold close to my heart and something I really remember fondly was when I used to live in France. We used to live like 10 minutes away from Saint-Emilion, like on the Dordogne River. Absolutely beautiful part of the world, spoiled for little climbs and hills and the river and the vineyards. But I would go and ride once a week with Jules, and we'd do a little loop. And on the way back, we'd always stop in the same little town on the river and have like a plat du jour, half a carafe of wine, or a little coffee. And it was like, 20 odd degrees, sunshine weather, shorts bibs weather. And it was like the best thing. And like, I have such fond memories of that. So if it's not the UK, it'd be that. But if not, it'd be, Denby's. Absolutely love it.
On these rides, do you have any favorite cafes? And do you have a favorite coffee order? Do you drink coffee?
Yeah, big coffee drinker. We just got a new coffee machine in the office, and it has revolutionized the office. I was a big fan of the pour over, or like the proper like American diner, like pot of black coffee. I'm a big black coffee drinker. So favorite coffee for me is a double espresso or just a black coffee. That's generally my go-to. Maybe a little luxury is a cortado or like something like that. But generally speaking, I'm just black coffee.
Yeah.
Favorite coffee shops? I think that's going to get me in trouble for the UK. Well, not in trouble, but like we work with so many great cafes that stock Styrkr that I could probably list 12. I feel like I've missed others out, but we're not short of fantastic cafes and little coffee shops in the southwest and around London, like in central out wide. But favorite cafe or favorite place for a coffee is in Denmark, just outside of Copenhagen, Cranks & Coffee, which is in Klampenborg, which is like 20 minutes outside of the city centre, and is an incredible place. Like it feels like a clubhouse. I remember when I first went, like I didn't know if someone was working there or just hanging out, and it was just like this range of Danes who were all like 6 foot blonde and disgustingly handsome or beautiful, just would like sort of intermingle and then go behind and make your coffee or chat or come back around. But it's such a great little spot, incredible riding on the doorstep, an incredible community, and do phenomenal coffee. That is my all-time cycling favorite place for a coffee and a ride, or like a cafe ride.
Amazing. I mean, you can also say Giro in Isha. Hi, Jordan. Thanks for listening again, mate. So obviously the name of this podcast is Cobbles and Cols, which came from this question, more or less. So, SJ, when you're maybe watching or you're riding, what's your preference? Is it kind of the cobble side or more on the coals end?
Cobbles, rouleurs, gritty, windy, crosswinds, one-day races, all-out onslaught, the carnage. You just can't beat Spring Classics or the monuments. It's my favorite.
Do you have a favorite cobbled section or cobbled hill that you like? You get super hyped that they like go up or over?
No, I don't think so.
Just all.
Just all. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've been lucky enough to go out and watch quite a lot of the different classics, and if you put a lot of time and effort and logistics into it, you can kind of see 3 or 4 sections at once, and you're sprinting across fields. I've been out for classics, and I've been in team cars, and I've been with photographers, and it's been the most terrifying experience of my life, like ripping around these corners at like 90 kilometers an hour, just tooting a horn on a blind corner. And I think just that embodiment and carnage of everything that goes around that professional cycling is just insane to watch and completely enthralling. Also, as a cyclist, I'm not a naturally built climber. I did an Everest once on Zwift in lockdown, and I think I realized then, I was like, this is the worst idea in the world. But I was halfway through and I was too stubborn to quit. But yeah.
How long did it take? How long did it take to complete?
10.5 hours.
That's pretty quick.
And then the beauty is that on Zwift, when you go downhill, you don't need to be on the bike. So you can get off, stretch, change your bibs, have a shower, have a little snack, and then hop back on. And then you've got a little bit of TV or something in the background as well. So it's, apart from the mind-numbingness of having just 4 white walls, and that's all you're doing for 10.5 hours, and there's no breeze or anything like that, or change in scenery. Like, it's not the worst way, I guess. Or it depends how you look at it.
Do you ever? I know you said you're not a climber, but is there any climbs you enjoy, or would it just be, from what you mentioned earlier, Denbies?
Climbs I enjoy. I don't know. Denbies is a great one, but it's not really. You can't really call climbs in London. Sorry, like climbs. I guess it's not really.
Kilometer's a kilometer.
Yeah, case okay. Like it's all vertical.
So,
I don't know. I think like Mallorca's probably got a special part for me. Like, I remember going on first training camps when I was like 16, 17. And it was like the first time ever doing mountain roads or climbs. And the MA10, which is the mountain road that goes across the spine at the top of Mallorca. And you got Puig Mayor, you can go off to Colleries and Sacalobra, then you come down, and then you've got Soya, and then it goes into Dea, and then across Andrax and over to like the army camp and drops into Palma. Valdemosa's in the middle somewhere as well. There's probably got to be one of the most stunning roads out there. And then, of course, with Styrkr, in a very fortunate position with the amount of traveling I get to do, the amount of cycling I get to do outside of the UK. And I remember last year going to Taiwan and spending a few days cycling with a community and some friends there, and being taken on this one climb that went up to this temple. And I'm not going to butcher the pronunciation, but it was just outside of Taichung, which is on the west coast of Taiwan. And it was probably about 60k out and then back. And it was sort of 20k coming out of the city and sort of starting to get into the fields. And one thing about Taichung is that very much there's one road is the edge of the city, and then it's countryside. And it's as brutal as that in terms of stop. And then you basically just have this 40k climb that just weaves up into the mountains. And you just went through pineapple fields and little villages and hamlets and townships. And, there'd be people setting up stalls that you could go and buy coffee or fresh fruit from. And the roads were like the most beautiful tarmac middle of nowhere, but the most pristine tarmac, the most insane views out across this island or across on the other side across the sea. And yeah, I think that I was just spellbound for the entire. I was sweating, getting dropped, chewing the handlebar, but I have never been my heart so full riding and having that as as the route.
Is that sort of like the same? Not that you would know, but you might know. Is that sort of around the same place where they do that? Is it Taiwan
The con-
100K? Yeah, com challenge.
no, on the opposite side of the island. So the KOM challenge, there's like the summer, there's the winter one, and there's something else. Like they're all traditionally on the eastern side of the island, and then Taichung is sort of central west on the coast.
Oh, nice. Now we get to one of the many big questions. What would you put in the Cycling Hall of Fame?
I'm going first off, maybe a controversial one, or it certainly is within a lot of my friends. Toe warmers, Cycling Hall of Fame, no doubt. Like
Belgian pro.
Every cyclist or every person who's coming into cycling and is looking at all of the kits and all of the accessories of what to wear, the first thing you need to buy is a set of toe warmers, and that will see you through the entirety of late winter into spring and is the perfect accompaniment to your riding.
Yeah, it's a autumn and spring must. I'm more of the full foot in winter, but I get really cold feet. I even tape up the vent. I tape up vents and everything. I probably just need the winter shoes, but I'm too stubborn to buy more than one.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Like over socks and full shoes and wrapping your feet in cling film or crisp packets, tin foil, double socks, the whole lot. So that's probably number one for Cycling Hall of Fame. Others, it's going to sound really maybe nerdy, but this was a group set that I always wanted as a kid and could never afford. And then I remember when I finally got it and it felt like a piece of me was complete, was the Dura-Ace 9000.
Yes, the grey one. The grey one.
Silver, grey, the rim brakes, the 11-speed, the 5339 chain rings, like the whole thing was like I wish I could have had it as a kid growing up as a teen, like getting cycling is like the best thing ever. And I first got one where it was just coming out of lockdown, and I bought myself a 1986 Pinarello Treviso steel frame that was sky blue, and it had chrome forks and chrome seat stays, chain stays, and I got it for £350. I don't think the person knew what they were selling. But anyway, I was absolutely loved this frame, and I decided that I was going to have some sort of like it has a name. There's like on Reddit, there's like cult billboards for this style of like taking retro frames and then putting new components on. So I cold set the rear of it, put 11-speed in, put in carbon rims, and then put on Dura-Ace 9000. And it was one of the most beautiful bikes I've ever owned. It rode like an absolute dream. And yeah, it was one of my most cherished things. And it was also the first bike I ever built myself.
Oh, nice.
So that was, Dura-Ace 9000 is definitely got to be in there. It's like an all-time design, function, form piece of cycling equipment. And that sort of leads on to the third one, is that I think when it comes to bikes, I've ridden all sorts of brands, and I'm now, I love two triangles on a bike, the classic look of a bike. So it's just all I want. I think there's some amazing aero bikes out there with like beautiful designs, and you can look at them and like drool over them and be like, that's super cool. But for me, I'm most happy on a bike that's very traditional looking. So, I ride my standard Cobbles at the moment, their road bike, and it's hand built in Italy. It's hand painted. It doesn't have proprietary seat posts or handlebars. You can change the parts, like the good old days when you can change the handlebars and the seat post, and it's like your own finishing kit. Back when Physique and 3T and other brands had all their different components, you could build it how you wanted to. So yeah, it's those traditional frames that has that little bit of artisan and, the thought and the love that goes into them. It's the Dura-Ace 9000 group set and then toe warmers.
Very good. Well, look, we get to our last question, and I would say arguably our most important question. To be up the same week every time. White bib shorts. This is a podcast mainly built on white bib shorts. SJ, where do you sit on the white bib short divide, mate?
I sit on the white bib short divide. Do you know what? I'm all for them. And if I had a body like David Gandy, I would be wearing them throughout the entirety of the year. I wish I had the confidence to wear them now and not look like a loaf of Hovis bread or a bloomer like when riding, but that's a me problem. I'm all for it. I think the panache, and that's like the quintessential to me, to have those white bib shorts. I love it. I'm all for it, and I think they look great. And I think as well, I don't know, it's this odd one of like what you should and shouldn't wear. There's probably stuff where I'm like, that's terrible, and you should never wear your socks over your bib tights. I will die on that hill.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's tights over
over sock.
Over socks. It's always tights over socks. Like it's default. Like also leg warmers. If you put your leg warmers underneath your socks, then when you're going to peel them off, they're stuck under your sock. Like there's a whole host of so yeah, that's one like hill of like I would be a snob and be like, that's not how you should wear it, or it frustrates me. But I'm all for white bib shorts. If you want to rock them, wear them.
Very good. And we spoke in the break, Pints and Pave. We're hoping to see you there, and we're hoping to see everybody there. We'll make sure we put that on Strava, Link My Ride, Carrier Pigeon, Telex, if we can find a machine in my office.
A big billboard at Old Street.
There you go, mate. On the death roundabout. It's the end of the podcast. I just want to say thank you very much for coming on, mate. We knew you before, but it's been actually much better getting to know you like this. We hope to see you both soon. Sorry, hope to see you soon. Where can people find Styrkr? How can people find you?
Gosh, where can people? I'm guessing majority of listeners are probably in the UK, right? Before I list off.
Generally, yeah.
I mean, so if you're not in the UK and you happen to be in New Zealand, Taiwan, South Africa, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, USA, Denmark, majority of Central Europe, Northern Ireland, there's probably a few countries I'm missing, then you'll be able to find Styrkr in your country. If you're in the UK, obviously there's Styrkr.com. We're also in plenty of bike stores up and down the country and local cafes. We have a fantastic distributor in the world of cycling called Upgrade. We also work with some other fantastic partners as well, which is great. And they've done a phenomenal job of being able to really help push Styrkr into as many stores as possible. I think that's Styrkr.com. Go direct, but hopefully it's in your local bike store. And if it's not in your local cafe or running store or bike store, then feel free to email in or contact me, and I will do my level-headed best to persuade them that it should be there.
Amazing. Well, SJ, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, mate, and we'll see you later. See ya.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for having me. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
It was a pleasure having you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.